I've been talking about this all morning, and it is, to me, this is one of the most interesting pieces of a political puzzle. And my next guest is somebody that will be with us on a regular basis because together he and I are going to be a crime-fighting duo. And I say crime-fighting for a reason. I'm not being disingenuous there. I believe that there are crimes against humanity that sometimes happen in a very legal way. And this is one of those ways. I've mentioned ALEC before, and we're going to get into that now. I am more than happy to take calls while I have my next guest. I ask that it be specific to this topic. So listen to what we have to say and then respond accordingly, okay? Let me turn my attention now to the editor and publisher of the Rochester Citizen. You can find them online at rochestercitizen.com. His name is Bruce Felk. Bruce and I have been friends for a lot of years now. I met Bruce through the radio show. He is one of the most passionate progressives I know, but he's also one of the fairest and smartest people I know. Bruce does nothing without doing his homework. Bruce takes no position without having knowledge. And Bruce is absolutely one of the shining stars in my life. And I mean that sincerely because he cares deeply about what happens to our society. And when he presented me with this story, when he heard we were coming back on air, I believe Bruce was the very first person I booked for the show. So let me turn my attentions now to Bruce Felk with the Rochester Citizen. Bruce, a pleasure to have you on first shift this morning.
Well, thank you, Tony. I appreciate that intro.
I appreciate you, buddy. I do appreciate you. As you and I have talked off air, we really do need to give some background. We need to explain to people what ALEC is and what they do in order for them to understand in context how we're going to move this conversation forward. And so before we get into your visit with your visit to Cincinnati last weekend and to the ALEC convention and what all that means, give my audience a little background what the American Legislative Exchange Council is.
Well, they would say, and I've had a conversation with their Director of Public Affairs, Reagan Weber, they would say they're basically an educational outfit. But as you look at their website, which is alec.org, ALEC.org, and I encourage your listeners to go there and do their own research about ALEC, they're much, much more than an educational outfit. I call them super lobbyists, and the reason I use that term is what they have meetings throughout the year. In fact, the meeting you mentioned in Cincinnati this last weekend was a task force meeting. They have 9 initiatives, they call them, and you can see those on their website, but they range from they're talking about health care and all kinds of issues that are in the news, frankly. Voter ID is another big one they're working on. So they have these 9 initiative areas, and what they do is they actually draft template legislation that they put on their website for their members. Only members can see it. We can't. You and I could not go to their website right now and see their draft legislation. But so what they do is they have these task forces. At the task forces, they decide whether to focus on an area, and if they just focus on an area, what the legislation that ALEC will be showing to their members looks like and what the language is.
Yeah, and Bruce Felk, let me just let people know, historically, ALEC was actually created during the Reagan years, and I want people to understand that this is not a new organization. They're not something that's just come around in the last couple of years. This isn't a Tea Party thing. This is about, the Reagan anti-federalist movement and how these folks, historically got involved in politics. It was seriously, as I've done my homework, it was about access to the politicians, which means money. They bought their way in at some level. And they were allowed policy access. They were allowed to literally study with senators and members of Congress and to literally hand deliver policy through a Reagan mandate that was supposedly supposed to give the states more power. That's the way they were originally set up. Well, that may be true, and that may not all be bad, but as we both know, there's not a Democrat to be found in this organization.
Well, that's not quite true, actually. Some people have reported that there may be 3.
Well, I stand corrected, Bruce.
But what's an interesting point you just made there, though, is when I had my conversation with Reagan Weber, their public affairs director, she actually made a statement that a third of their membership were Democrats. But the other interesting thing about that is, since they're a private organization, they do not release their membership list, whether it's their 2,400 legislators that belong to ALEC or the corporate sponsors of ALEC. And when they have their meetings, those two groups intermingle.
All right, so as we take a look at this, now we've defined what the American Legislative Exchange Council is, and to some degree, and again, you're right, we need to encourage people to go to ALEC, ALEC.org, and do their own reading. What does that have to do with why you and I are together? Why are we even talking about this sitting in Southeast Michigan today? Why should this matter to us, Bruce Felk?
Well, one issue that I believe, in fact, I watched one of their videos that they have on their website, and they were talking about literally privatizing cities. And, of course, we all know that Benton Harbor is the first city in Michigan to have been privatized. And Benton Harbor has been in the news a lot lately. They had a pretty good sized rally and protest down there last week. They're going to have another one on this coming Saturday, May 7th. Governor Snyder is actually going to be visiting Benton Harbor. So that's one reason that I think ALEC is extremely relevant to the state of Michigan and the residents here.
Well, and of course, as we look at the conservative movement to privatize business, in fact, you and I spoke briefly yesterday, and we started to get into an intense conversation. I said, "Stop! Let's do this on air." You wanted to talk a little bit about prisons, privatizing prisons.
Yeah, I met a gentleman in Cincinnati over the weekend, and he's actually written a book. His name is Bob Sloan, and he's been doing a lot of research about the private prison industry. And actually, we already have that's another reason it relates to Michigan. We already have private prisons in Michigan. And what has been happening, there actually was some federal legislation that actually allows private prisons and public-private partnerships to exist, but ALEC is taking it to a whole new level in that they are allowing these private prison corporations to use prisoners as cheap labor for private corporations.
Seriously?
Yeah, I've been getting a lot of information from Bob, and in fact, I think I'm going to be doing a story about it on the Rochester Citizen, because this is a huge story, and it's a sad story that we actually now are going to have prison labor competing with labor in the private workforce. Yeah,
it's almost reminiscent of the Shawshank Redemption. When the warden is bribed so somebody else can get the road work, but that may be a movie. This is real life, and again, this goes back to the assault on organized labor in this state. And Bruce Felk, let's just be honest about it. There is an organized effort to dismantle organized labor in Southeast Michigan and throughout the state of Michigan, especially at the state level.
Well, and throughout the country. I think I mentioned to you when we spoke setting up this interview that my daughter lives in Madison, Wisconsin, and so I've been I spend time there anyway because my grandchildren are there, but I also spend time there. I was at the rally when Sarah Palin and Andrew Breitbart were there. I've been there several times when large rallies. In fact, the biggest one was when the 14 senators that were camping out in Illinois came back to Wisconsin. So this thing with organized labor obviously is in Michigan. I know there's some efforts to make Michigan a right-to-work state. We all know that, and there's just all kinds of things that are coming, and I believe they come directly from. In fact, I know they come directly from ALEC. I have my state representative is Tom McMillan in Rochester Hills, and he actually has introduced 4 bills into the state legislature that, through some research, it looks like come directly from the model legislation that ALEC has on its website.
Well, again, and that's where we're trying to connect the dot, and so Bruce Felk just beautifully does that. It is really template. It's a templated legislation that your elected representative or senator can be a part of this organization. And by the way, if you just go there, you can find out who from the state of Michigan is a member of ALEC. It'll make sense to you. It'll quickly make sense to you. You're right. There may be a couple Democrats there, Bruce, but as you and I both know, none of them are from the state of Michigan. That's for damn sure.
No, you can't. And also, I just want to correct you. Real quick again. I hate to do this again, but you can't see the entire membership.
No, but you can see your legislatures. I mean, you can see state by state who's involved.
Right. Well, you can see the chair people.
Right.
Which is only one or two
Bruce, hold that thought. We got to take a quick break. Bruce is going to stay with us through the break. If you want to join us, again, let's try to be topic specific. We're talking about ALEC. We're talking about your future, ladies and gentlemen, and what all this means. 888-552-3595, Tony at thetonyshow.org. A quick break here, Diane, and welcome back 22 minutes after the hour, 888-552-3595. I am Tony Trupiano. My guest, Bruce Felk. He is the publisher and editor of the Rochester Citizen. We're talking about an organization called ALEC, A-L-E-C. They're found alec.alec.org, alec.org. They're the American Legislative Exchange Council. And I'm telling you, this is bad stuff. Bruce, before we move on, we got a caller that's want to talk about the prison aspect of this. So let's go to the phones and welcome Dave in Oregon, Ohio to First Shift. Dave, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, you're doing a great job, Tony.
Thank you.
If they could privatize prisons like they have, I think they're going to be guaranteed a certain amount of people going through it. But if they could privatize the police force in Benton Harbor or Detroit, doesn't that smack of Robocop? Remember Robocop, the movie?
Oh, absolutely.
It was like a Blackwater police program, and they just rained hell on people. And the end of Robocop, the mayor fired the Blackwater head, and then Robocop killed him. But if the mayor has been replaced by a czar, it just smacks of something really evil.
Yeah, and Bruce, let me bring you into this conversation. I mean, I think Dave gets it. This is why we're outraged, right, Bruce?
Well, I mean, that's already happened. I mean, we all remember New Orleans, right? That Blackwater, the government sent Blackwater into New Orleans after Katrina, and like you said, with especially a city like Benton Harbor, where the city's already been privatized. The EFM, Joe Harris there is already. In fact, I don't know if you heard the video. Rachel Maddow played the video. There's a blog in Michigan. There's a guy named, it's a Eclectablog.
Eclectablog, yeah, we played that yesterday.
Yeah, I think I remember. I was listening in yesterday. So I mean, absolutely, that's why this is. I mean, the word to use that I think is a very apt word is evil.
Yeah, evil is, and that's, and really, Bruce, that's why we bring this up this morning. Listen, I am not an alarmist, Bruce. I don't believe you're an alarmist, but there is a certain reality to what's happening to our legislation.
Well, I think too what's happened, if you look at statistics, the number of people in prison in the United States of America is up dramatically. In fact, there was a case, I forget what state it was in, and the judge already went to jail. He was in cahoots with a private prison corporation, and he was actually sending juveniles to prison for very minor offenses because he was getting a kickback from the private prison corporation. So this is not make-believe. This is real stuff that's already been happening all across the country.
Yeah, there's no question. And again, I'm asking people to wake up to there's a new reality. Again, this may be tough stuff, Bruce, first thing in the morning. I don't care. I'm not going to apologize for that. There's a reason. There is a profoundly important reason why people need to start paying attention. If they understand, let's talk. And I don't even know if you know the funding. Who funds ALEC? Do you know?
Well, there's several sites that list some of their corporate members. Well, two of the people we do know, the Koch brothers, are involved. Okay, so those are two guys that have been in the news a lot lately, right? It's also a who's who of corporate America. They have corporate memberships that range anywhere from $2,000 a year to $5,000 a year. And the fee for the legislators to join is nominal. I think it's about $100 a year. They can join and have access to the model legislation that's on the website. In fact, that's what my legislator apparently has done. He hasn't been to any meetings even, but he's able to log onto their website, go into a specific area, browse around. There's over 740 pieces of model legislation that he has access to. And he can just download those, fill in the state of Michigan, maybe check it against, the Michigan Constitution, and he can submit legislation instead of going through the normal legislative process, which is to, see a problem that needs a solution, put it out into the state bureau that writes legislation for legislators, introduce it, have hearings, bring in experts. That's the normal process. And what these legislators are able to do with ALEC is just go to a website, log in, download a template, fill in the blank, and presto, they've got a brand new piece of legislation that probably benefits one of their corporate members.
Yeah, and that is, again, another point that needs to be made. It's always, again, folks, broken record time, you got to follow the money. There's a reason that you follow the money, because that gets you to the root of what we're talking about. It gets to the root of what's happening. It gets to it helps to explain why it's going on. Bruce, of course, the alarming part of this is we have supermajorities both at the state level in both the state house and the state senate. We have a Republican governor. We've got an organization like ALEC. This is not necessarily a formula that's comfortable for progressives and should not be comfortable for the majority of our citizenry.
No, this is very dangerous, and I think the fact is this is happening most prolifically in the states that are like Michigan, where there is a Republican governor and Republican legislature, because especially in states where there's big enough majorities like Michigan, where the Democrats are irrelevant, basically. So they can introduce this legislation, and Democrats can kick and scream all we want. But the fact is they can force it through, just like they put through the EFM legislation. We really can't stop it. We can protest, we can kick and scream all we want, but we aren't able to really stop anything.
Is the EFM part of the ALEC program? Was that a templated program?
I don't know if there's legislation. I suspect that it is, only because I did listen to one of their video presentations, and there's a guy in the video talking about this very subject, which is privatized cities, and that's what we're really talking about here. Is these these EFMs being able to privatize the cities? I mean, Benton Harbor is the perfect example.
Yeah, well, it is the perfect example, and again, although we're not going to have time to replay that audio this morning. I was offended at every way you could possibly be offended with that piece of audio, Bruce Felk. It just seems to me so non-American even. I mean, I'm talking literally subversive.
Well, this is so dangerous. This is so un-American and so anti-democratic. And the fact is too, a lot of these things are happening. You look at the states where there are Republican majorities now. You look at Michigan, Ohio, New Jersey, Florida. You look at the legislation that's being introduced in Florida. They're talking about these voter ID laws are another example. The ALEC calls that a nonpartisan issue, but when you look at what's happening, is they're making it harder to vote.